I blew out a single candle in my tiny Cincinnati apartment and waited for my phone to light up. It didn't. Then I saw my mom's comment under my sister's airport photo, claiming she is the one who makes us proud. My stomach turned when I remembered the emergency fund I'd been paying into for years. I opened the shared account and realized I wasn't invisible. I was their plan. My name is Addison Perry, and today I turned 30 years old in a silence so profound it felt heavy enough to bruise. I sat alone at the small, wobbly laminate table in the kitchenette of my one-bedroom apartment in Cincinnati. Outside, the Ohio weather was doing exactly what it always did in November, which was a miserable combination of sleet and gray rain that slapped against the window pane like wet rags. Inside, the only light came from a single, sad little wax candle stuck into the center of a grocery store cupcake. It was vanilla with pink frosting, the kind that leaves a waxy film on the roof of your mouth, but it was what I could grab quickly on my way home from work. I did not have a party. I did not have a dinner reservation. I had a cupcake, a glass of cheap Merlot, and a quiet desperation that I had been trying to swallow down for the better part of a decade. Happy birthday to me. I leaned forward and blew out the flame. The smoke curled up, thin and gray, smelling of burnt wick and sugar. I sat there in the sudden darkness for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my neighbor upstairs walking across their floorboards. I was waiting. It is a pathetic thing to admit, but I was waiting. I was 30 years old, a grown woman with a responsible job and a 401k. Yet I was sitting in the dark waiting for my phone to light up with a text message from my mother or my father or my sister. Just one message. Just a simple acknowledgement that I existed, and that this day marked the moment I had entered the world 3 decades ago. I counted to 60 in my head. 1, 2, 3, nothing happened. The screen of my phone remained black, reflecting the dim ambient light from the street lamps outside. I finally picked it up. It is a reflex, I think, for my generation. When we feel pain or loneliness, we turn to the glowing rectangle to numb it. Even though we know it usually only makes the wound deeper, I unlocked the screen and opened Instagram. The first thing I saw was a splash of bright colors that hurt my eyes. It was a photo posted 17 minutes ago. It was my sister, Sienna. She was standing in the middle of the international terminal at the airport, wearing a beige trench coat that looked suspiciously like cashmere and holding a passport in one hand and a glass of champagne in the other. She looked radiant. She always looked radiant. Sienna was 26, 4 years younger than me, and she had the kind of chaotic, magnetic energy that sucked all the air out of a room. In the photo, she was laughing, her head thrown back, her blonde hair catching the light. I read the caption, and the air left my lungs as if I had been punched in the solar plexus. Surprise of a lifetime. Mom and Dad just told me to pack my bags because we are going to Paris. Can you believe it? Best surprise ever. Au revoir. Ohio. Paris. I stared at the word until it blurred. Paris. They were going to Paris. My parents, who constantly complained about the rising cost of heating oil and the price of ground beef, had just surprised my younger sister with a trip to one of the most expensive cities in the world, and they had done it on my birthday. My thumb hovered over the screen. I should have scrolled past. I should have closed the app and thrown the phone across the room. But I am a masochist, apparently, so I clicked on the comments. There were dozens of them already. Hearts, fire emojis, friends telling Sienna she looked like a model, aunts and cousins wishing them a safe flight. And then, right at the top, pinned by Sienna so everyone would see it first, was a comment from my mother. You deserve the world, baby girl. Go shine. She is the one who makes us proud. I read that sentence 3 times. She is the one who makes us proud. It was not just a compliment to Sienna. It was a statement of exclusion. In the grammar of my family, praise for Sienna was always, implicitly, a critique of Addison. If she was the one who made them proud, then what was I? I was the one who made them solvent. I put the phone down on the table, face down, so I would not have to see the notification light if it blinked. The nausea hit me then, a cold, rolling wave in my stomach that had nothing to do with the wine. This was the dynamic. It had always been the dynamic. I looked around my apartment. It was clean, functional, and devoid of luxury. I lived in a neighborhood that was safe, but decidedly uncool. I drove a sedan that was 7 years old. I brown-bagged my lunch every single day. I did these things because I was the responsible one. I was the steady heartbeat that kept the family body alive. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me, the 1,000 little paper cuts that had led to this moment. I remembered my high school graduation. I was valedictorian. I had given a speech about perseverance and duty. My parents had sat in the audience, clapping politely, afterwards. My father had checked his watch and said we needed to beat the traffic because Sienna had a dance recital the next morning. We went to Applebee's. I had a burger. That was it. Compare that to the time Sienna managed to graduate from cosmetology school after dropping out of 2 different community colleges. You would have thought she had won a Nobel Prize. They threw a backyard bash that cost more than my first car. They invited everyone. My mother cried during the toast, talking about how Sienna had found her passion. I remembered when I got my job at Northbridge Pharma Solutions. It was a serious job. I handle revenue cycle management and complex billing reconciliation. It is dry, difficult work that requires a brain that can track thousands of moving numbers without snapping. When I told my parents I had landed the position with a starting salary that was higher than both of theirs combined at the time, my mother had just nodded and said that was good, because now I could help out more. Help out more, that phrase echoed in the empty kitchen. I worked 50, sometimes 60 hours a week. I spent my days arguing with insurance companies, auditing ledgers, and ensuring that Northbridge Pharma Solutions got paid every cent they were owed. I was good at it. I was efficient. I was invisible. Sienna was a content creator, which mostly meant she posted videos of herself trying on clothes or reacting to other people's videos. Before that, she was a stylist. Before that, she was a life coach. She changed careers like she changed hairstyles, and every time she failed. My parents were there with a safety net woven out of excuses. She's just artistic. My father would say, she has a free spirit. You can't expect her to sit in a cubicle like you. Addison, it would kill her soul. So I sat in the cubicle so she could have a soul. That was the trade. But Paris? I stood up and walked to the window, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. The streetlights blurred in the rain. The math did not make sense. I knew my parents' finances, or at least, I thought I did. My father was a retired mechanic with a bad back and a pension that was barely enough to keep the lights on in their drafty house in the suburbs. My mother worked part-time at a bakery, mostly for the social interaction. They were always crying poor. Every time I visited, the conversation would inevitably turn to how expensive everything was. The roof needed fixing. The water heater was making a noise. Property taxes were going up. And because I was Addison, the stable one, the one with the corporate job and the benefits package, I stepped up. It started 5 years ago. My father had a health scare, a minor cardiac event that turned out to be nothing but indigestion and panic. But it terrified them. They had no savings. Zero. I remembered sitting at their kitchen table, looking at their terrified faces. "We need a safety net," my mother had said, gripping my hand with her cold, dry fingers. "We need an emergency fund for the family, just in case something happens to Dad, or to me. You are the only one who can save us, Addison." So we opened a joint account. It was at a bank I did not use for my daily banking, a credit union across town. My name was on it, and their names were on it. It's for emergencies only. My father had sworn, looking me in the eye, life and death stuff. "Addie, we won't touch a penny unless the roof caves in or one of us is in the hospital." I believed them. Of course I believed them. They were my parents. For 5 years, I had set up an automatic transfer. Every single time my paycheck hit my account on the 15th and the 30th of the month, a significant chunk of it vanished instantly, routed to that credit union, $500 a paycheck, $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, over 5 years. That was $60,000 of my money sitting in an account in West Cincinnati. I had never checked the balance. I know how stupid that sounds now. I work in finance. My entire career is built on auditing and verifying transaction flows. But this was family. You do not audit your mother. You do not demand a ledger from your father. I just assumed the money was there, growing, gathering a little bit of interest, sitting like a concrete block of security that kept my parents from sleeping on the street. I tightened my grip on the windowsill. Paris cost money. Last-minute flights to Paris cost a lot of money. Hotels in Paris cost a fortune. If my parents were broke, so broke that they needed me to subsidize their emergency fund, how were they paying for this? A terrible, cold suspicion began to creep up my spine. It felt like an insect crawling over my skin. Maybe they saved up? Maybe Dad had a windfall? Maybe they won a scratch-off lottery ticket? I tried to rationalize it. I tried to push the ugly thought away. But then I looked back at the table, at the phone lying face down next to the cold cupcake. She is the one who makes us proud. They had not called me. Today was my 30th birthday. It is a milestone. It is the day you officially stop being a young adult and just become an adult. It is a day that matters. And they were at an airport, probably drinking overpriced mimosas, celebrating Sienna. They had forgotten me, or worse, they had remembered me, and decided I did not matter enough to interrupt their excitement. I walked back to the table and picked up my phone. My hands were trembling slightly, not from cold, but from a mixture of rage and adrenaline. I unlocked the phone again. I did not go to Instagram this time. I went to my banking app. I stared at the login screen for the credit union. I had not logged in for at least 2 years. I had lost the password ages ago, but I had it written down in a notebook in my desk drawer. I rummaged through the drawer, tossing aside pens and old receipts until I found the little black moleskin. There it was. User ID, Addison P_family. Password, Security First, 1996. I typed it in. The little loading wheel spun. It seemed to take forever. While it loaded, I thought about the text I had sent my mother 3 days ago. Hey, Mom, just checking if you guys want to come up for dinner on Tuesday for my birthday? I can make that lasagna Dad likes. She had replied 4 hours later with a single thumbs-up emoji, and then, later, we might be busy. Sweetie, Dad has a thing. A thing. The thing was a transatlantic flight. The screen flashed. The account dashboard loaded. My eyes went immediately to the balance. I expected to see something around $60,000, maybe a little more with interest, maybe a little less if they had had a minor emergency they forgot to tell me about. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, sure that I was misreading the numbers. The balance was not $60,000. The balance was $412.16. I sat down hard on the cheap wooden chair. The breath left my body in a whoosh. $400. Where was the money? Where was the $60,000 I had poured into this account? Month after month, year after year? The money I had sacrificed vacations for? The money I had driven an old car to save? The money that was supposed to be the shield protecting my aging parents from disaster? I clicked on Transaction History. The list populated. It was not a list of medical bills. It was not a list of roof repairs or furnace replacements. It was a hemorrhage. I saw the most recent transaction. Pending from yesterday, Global Travel Agency, $10,450. $10,000. For a flight. I scrolled down. Saks Fifth Avenue, $500. Apple Store, $1,200. Sephora, $300. Cash withdrawal. ATM, $400. Cash withdrawal. ATM, $400. My eyes scanned dates. Last month, the month before, last Christmas. I saw a transaction from 2 years ago labeled Sienna Rent Assist, $2,000. I saw another one. Sienna Car Repair, $1,500. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. They had not just spent the money. They had funneled it. They had turned my emergency fund, my blood and sweat and anxiety, into a slush fund for their golden child. I looked back at the date of the travel agency charge. Yesterday. They had used my money to buy Sienna a trip to Paris on my birthday. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, but it sounded like a sob. It was hysterical and jagged. I looked at the cupcake again. The candle had burned all the way down, leaving a little pool of pink wax on the frosting. It looked ruined. I picked up the cupcake. It was cold. I walked over to the trash can and dropped it in. It made a dull thud. I walked back to the table and sat down in front of the phone. The glow of the screen illuminated the dark kitchen. She is the one who makes us proud. The words felt different now. They didn't feel like an insult anymore. They felt like a confession. Of course she made them proud. She was living the life they wanted to live, using the money they didn't earn. She was their avatar of success, funded by the invisible, boring, reliable daughter who sat in Cincinnati eating a grocery store cupcake alone. I was not a daughter to them. I was an asset. I was a resource. I was a utility, like electricity or running water. Only noticed when I stopped working. I looked at the clock on the microwave. It was 8:15 in the evening. In Paris, it was probably 2 in the morning. They were likely asleep on a plane, flying over the ocean, dreaming of croissants and the Eiffel Tower, comfortable in the knowledge that the bills were paid and the safety net was secure. They thought I was asleep too. They thought I was the same Addison I had always been, the one who kept her head down, the one who never asked questions, the one who just wanted to be helpful. They were wrong. I did not cry. The tears that had been threatening to fall earlier had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity that felt like ice water in my veins. I took a screenshot of the account balance. Then I took a screenshot of the transaction history. Then I opened a new spreadsheet on my phone. I was going to audit them. I was going to go through every single line item for the last 5 years. I was going to find every cent. There were no birthday texts coming, no phone calls, no "I love yous." That was fine. If they wanted to treat our relationship like a business transaction, if they wanted to treat me like a bank instead of a human being, then I would start acting like a bank. And banks are ruthless when you default. I picked up the phone and stared at the remaining balance. $412.16. "Happy birthday, Addison," I whispered to the empty room. My voice didn't shake. I turned off the screen. But I didn't go to sleep. I had work to do. I pushed the empty cupcake wrapper aside and pulled my work laptop out of my bag. My phone screen was too small for what I needed to do. I needed a spreadsheet. I needed columns. I needed the brutal, unsparing clarity of a pivot table. The fan of my laptop whirred to life, sounding like a small jet engine in the quiet apartment. I logged into the credit union website again. The blue light from the 13-inch screen casting harsh shadows across my kitchen table. My hands were steady now. The shaking had stopped, replaced by a strange, icy numbness that felt a lot like the anesthesia they give you before they pull a tooth. You know the pressure is coming, but you cannot feel the pain yet. I navigated to the Export tab. I selected the date range, all time. Then I clicked Download. The CSV file appeared in my Downloads folder. I opened it. Thousands of rows of data populated the screen, a chaotic waterfall of numbers, dates, and merchant codes. To anyone else, this might have looked like a headache. To me, it looked like a crime scene. And I was the forensic analyst. I started by filtering the deposits. I needed to see the baseline. I needed to see exactly how much of my life I had poured into this black hole. I scrolled down the credit column. It was a monotonous, rhythmic list. $1,000, $1,000, $1,000, every single month, on the 15th, like clockwork, like a tithe, like a tax I paid for the privilege of being their daughter. I highlighted the column and looked at the sum in the bottom right corner. $62,500. I stared at that number. $62,000. That was a down payment on a house in a decent school district. That was a master's degree, paid in full. That was a new car to replace my rattling sedan, plus a 3-week tour of Europe, plus a robust investment portfolio. That was my sweat. That was my overtime. That was every lunch I skipped. Every happy hour I declined. Every time I told my friends I could not afford to go to the concert or the weekend getaway. I had lived like a monk, so my parents could have a safety net. I took a deep breath, inhaling the stale air of my apartment, and switched my focus to the debit column. It was time to see where the safety net went. I sorted by merchant name first. At a glance, the top of the list looked innocent enough. I saw charges for Duke Energy. I saw the Cincinnati Waterworks. I saw a few charges for the local mechanic where my dad took his truck. For a split second, a foolish hope flared in my chest. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe the Paris trip was a one-time insanity, a moment of madness funded by a credit card I did not know about, and the drained account was just, what, bad luck? Inflation? Then I started looking at the dates and the amounts. I saw a charge for Duke Energy in July of last year, $350. That seemed high, but it was summer. The AC runs hard. But then I looked at the next line. Duke Energy, $350. Same date, same amount. And the next line, Duke Energy, $350. 3 charges to the electric company in a single day, totaling over $1,000. I frowned. That was impossible. Unless I logged into my own personal bank account in a separate tab. I pulled up my own utility bill history. The transaction code for the electric company always looked a specific way. It had a specific merchant ID. I looked back at the spreadsheet from the joint account. The merchant ID was different. It didn't match the standard utility code. It was manually entered. My stomach dropped. They hadn't paid the electric bill 3 times. They had withdrawn cash at an ATM or a bank teller and simply noted it as Duke Energy in the memo line to cover their tracks. Or maybe the bank teller had typed what they said, but the transaction type was listed as counter withdrawal. They were pulling cash, thousands of dollars in cash, and they were labeling it as bills. I highlighted those rows and colored them red. I kept scrolling. The camouflage began to fall away, revealing the ugly truth underneath. I found a recurring charge for Luxe and Lace Boutique. I knew that store. It was a high-end shop in the trendy part of town. The kind of place where a simple cotton t-shirt cost $80 and the sales assistants looked at you with disdain if you weren't carrying a designer bag. $200 here, $400 there. One notable spree in December, totaling $1,200. My mother did not shop at Luxe and Lace. My mother bought her clothes at Target and complained if jeans cost more than $30. I went to Sienna's Instagram page on my phone. I scrolled back to December. There she was, Sienna, posing in front of a mirrored wall, wearing a sequined mini dress and a faux fur coat. The caption read, "New fit for the holiday party season. Feeling expensive." I looked at the spreadsheet. December 12th, $1,200. I looked at the photo. December 13th. I felt a burn in my throat. I had paid for that dress. I had paid for the coat. I had paid for the shoes she was wearing while she toasted to the good life. I kept digging. The knife twisted deeper with every row. I found a charge from 2 years ago. The Gilded Palm Resort, Florida, $3,500. I froze. I remembered that week. My parents had told me they were driving down to visit Aunt Margie in her trailer park in Sarasota because she was having hip surgery. They said they were sleeping on her pull-out couch to save money. I had even sent them an extra $500 that week, transferred directly to this account, because I was worried about them paying for gas and food on the road. I Googled the Gilded Palm Resort. It was a 4-star beachfront property, ocean view suites, spa services, fine dining. They hadn't stayed with Aunt Margie. They had taken a vacation, a luxury vacation, and they had paid for it with the money I sent them for gas. I closed my eyes for a moment, pressing my palms against my eyelids until I saw stars. The humiliation was physical. It felt like heat rising up my neck. I had been so worried about them. I had sat at my desk at Northbridge Pharma, eating a peanut butter sandwich, thinking about my poor parents sleeping on a lumpy sofa bed in a trailer. While they were likely ordering room service and laughing at the ocean, I opened my eyes and went back to the data. I was not done. I found the transfers. There were direct wire transfers out of the account. Most of them were smallish, 200, 300, but one stood out like a beacon. It was dated 6 months ago, May 15th. Transfer to account ending in 8892. Sienna Perry. Amount, $8,000. Memo. Graduation gift, $8,000. Sienna had finished a 6-month certificate program in aesthetic laser treatment. It was hardly a graduation. It was a certificate. When I finished my master's degree in finance, graduating with honors while working full-time, my parents had given me a card. Inside the card was a $20 gift certificate to Olive Garden. I still had the card in a shoebox somewhere. I had cherished it. I thought it was all they could afford. $8,000. That was a used car. That was a nest egg. That was freedom. And they had handed it to her for finishing a beauty course she had probably barely attended. But the final blow, the one that made me stop typing and simply stare at the screen, was near the top of the list. It was recent, only 3 weeks ago. It wasn't a purchase. It wasn't a cash withdrawal. It was a check clearing. Check number 402. Payable to Harrison Realty Group. Amount, $5,000. Memo. Deposit. Unit 4. I didn't know who Harrison Realty Group was, but Unit 4B sounded like an apartment. My parents owned their house. It was a small, crumbling thing, but they owned it. They weren't moving into an apartment. I pulled up a new browser tab and searched for Harrison Realty Group Cincinnati Unit 4B. The search results populated. It was a listing for a luxury apartment complex downtown. The lofts at the river, exposed brick, rooftop pool, concierge service, the kind of place young professionals dreamed of living in but could rarely afford. Unit 4B was listed as leased. Sienna had been complaining about her roommates for months. She had said she needed her own space. She said she needed a place that matched her vibe. My parents hadn't just bought her a trip to Paris. They had put down a security deposit and first month's rent on a luxury apartment for her. I did the math in my head. $5,000 down. The rent was probably $2,500 a month. Who was going to pay that rent? Sienna worked part-time at a salon and made $0 from her influencer career. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They were going to pay it, using the emergency fund, using my money. I looked at the balance again. $412.16. They had drained it all. The Paris trip was just the cherry on top. The apartment deposit, the graduation gift, the resort vacation, the endless shopping sprees at boutiques. They had systematically siphoned off every single dollar I had contributed. I wasn't their safety net. I was their venture capitalist. I was the silent partner in the business of spoiling Sienna. And the worst part? The part that made bile rise in my throat? I had let them do it. I had handed them the loaded gun and looked the other way while they pulled the trigger. I had trusted them blindly because they were family, because I was desperate to be the good daughter, the reliable one, the one they could lean on. I had bought my own neglect. I had financed my own invisibility. I looked at the spreadsheet. I had categorized every single fraudulent charge. I created a pivot table summarizing the theft by category: travel, luxury goods, cash withdrawals, direct transfers to Sienna, housing. I highlighted the grand total cell at the bottom of the sheet. Total misappropriated funds: $64,588.42. The number was staggering. It was more than my annual salary after taxes. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen. The candle in the trash can was long cold. The text messages I had hoped for were never coming. The shock began to recede, peeling away like dead skin. Beneath it, the humiliation burned hot and bright for a moment. The shame of being the fool. The dupe. The ATM with a heartbeat. But then, that faded too. Something else settled in its place. Something cold and hard and incredibly heavy. It was clarity. I reached for my phone and took a photo of the screen. I captured the spreadsheet. I captured the pivot table. I captured the check image for the apartment deposit. Then I saved the Excel file to my hard drive. I saved a backup copy to a USB drive. I emailed a copy to my personal secure email address. I closed the laptop lid. The screen went dark, plunging the kitchen back into shadows. I touched my face. My cheeks were dry. I realized with a start that I wasn't crying. I hadn't shed a single tear since I saw the photo of Sienna at the airport. I wasn't sad anymore. Sadness implies a loss of something you hope to get back. You don't get this back. You don't recover from the realization that your parents see you as a financial host organism for your sister. I stood up and walked to the refrigerator. I opened a bottle of water and drank it in one long, steady gulp. I was done being the good daughter. I was done being the safety net. I was done being the one who makes them solvent, while she is the one who makes them proud. They wanted to play with numbers? Fine. I was really good with numbers. I looked at the calendar on the wall. Rent for Unit 4B was likely due on the 1st of the month. That was in 8 days. There was $400 in the account. I walked back to the table, picked up my phone, and opened my banking app again. I found the recurring transfer scheduled for the 15th. Transfer to joint savings. $1,000. I hit cancel. A confirmation box popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this recurring series? I tapped, yes, series canceled. I stared at the confirmation message. It was such a small action, a tap of a finger, but it felt like I had just cut the brake line on a speeding car. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to demand answers they would never give me. I was just going to let the checks bounce. I walked into my bedroom and laid out my clothes for work the next day. A crisp blazer, slacks, my favorite heels. I needed to sleep. I had a big day tomorrow. I had a lot of work to do. And for the first time in my life, none of it was for them. I crawled into bed and pulled the duvet up to my chin. The apartment was quiet. I was alone. But for the first time in 30 years, I didn't feel lonely. I felt dangerous. The morning after my 30th birthday arrived with a gray, relentless drizzle that washed over Cincinnati, but for the first time in years, the gloom didn't seep into my bones. I woke up 2 minutes before my alarm, my heart beating with a steady, unfamiliar rhythm. It was the rhythm of a person who had a secret. I lay in bed for a moment, staring at the water stain on the ceiling that looked like a map of a country that didn't exist. Usually, my first thought in the morning was a mental calculation of obligations. Did I pay the electric bill? Did Mom need her prescription refilled? Was today the day Dad's back would give out, requiring an urgent transfer for a chiropractor? Today, my first thought was a number. $412.16. That was what was left of my dignity in the joint account, and today, I was taking it back. I got up and went through the motions of my morning routine: coffee, shower, toast, but every action felt sharp, precise. I felt like a spy in my own life. I dressed for work, but instead of driving straight to the Northbridge Pharma office, I took a detour. I pulled into the parking lot of the credit union. It was 8:45 in the morning. They opened at 9. I sat in my car, watching the rain streak the windshield, and waited. The plan was simple, but it had to be executed with discipline. I couldn't just storm in and close the account. That would send a notification. That would trigger a phone call to my father saying, "The joint account has been closed." I wasn't ready for the confrontation yet. I needed the checks to bounce first. I needed them to feel the absence of the safety net before they knew I had cut the ropes. At 9 o'clock sharp, the security guard unlocked the glass doors. I was the first customer inside. I walked up to the teller, a woman named Brenda, who had processed my deposits for years. She smiled at me, a reflex of recognition. "Morning, Addison," she said. "Deposit today?" "Withdrawal," I said. My voice sounded flat, even to my own ears. I slid my debit card across the counter. "I need to transfer the remaining balance to a cashier's check," I said, "and I want to ensure there are no pending scheduled transfers out of this account." Brenda tapped on her keyboard. "You have the recurring transfer coming in from your personal payroll on the 15th, but I see you canceled that online last night." "Correct," I said. Are there any outgoing transfers scheduled? Auto payments? Let me look. Brenda squinted at the screen. There is an auto draft set up for Harrison Realty Group, $2,500, scheduled for the first of the month. My heart hammered against my ribs. There it was, the rent for Sienna's luxury apartment. Cancel it, I said. Brenda looked up, surprised. Cancel the rent payment? Are you sure? Honey, you don't want a late fee? I am sure, I said. Cancel it, and block the merchant. Okay, Brenda said slowly, her typing becoming more deliberate. It is done. Now, about that withdrawal. You want to leave the account open? Leave it open, I said. Just bring the balance to zero. Leaving it open was the key. If I closed it, they would know immediately. If I left it open but empty, they wouldn't know until they tried to swipe their card or until the landlord called screaming about a bounced check. It bought me time. It bought me silence. Brenda handed me a cashier's check for $412.16. I took it. It felt light as a feather, but it weighed a ton in implication. I walked out of the credit union and got back in my car. I didn't cash the check into my regular bank account. That felt too close, too messy. I drove 3 blocks down to a national bank, a massive glass and steel fortress where I had no history. I walked in and sat down with a personal banker. I would like to open a high-yield savings account, I told him, and a checking account, completely separate from any existing profiles. He nodded, typing away. And what would you like to name the savings goal? We have options like vacation, home, or rainy day. I thought about it. I thought about the emergency fund that had become the Paris fund. I thought about the years of anxiety, the scrimping, the fear. Call it my life fund, I said. Okay, he typed it in. My life fund. Here's your debit card. You are all set. I deposited the $400. It was a pathetic starting balance for a 30-year-old woman, but looking at that number on the crisp new receipt gave me a rush of adrenaline that was better than any drug. It was mine. Every single cent of it belonged to me. I drove to work, arriving 10 minutes late. Usually, I would panic about being late. Today, I walked to my cubicle with my head high. I sat down, opened my spreadsheets, and began my day. But the silence was loud. Every time my phone buzzed on my desk, I flinched. The guilt was a physical thing, a nausea that rolled in waves. They are your parents, a voice whispered in my head. It sounded like my mother. After all they did for you, they raised you, they fed you. How can you leave them high and dry? What if Dad really does get sick? What if the car breaks down and they can't get to work? I had to grip the edge of my desk to stop my hands from shaking. I had been programmed for 30 years to put their needs above my own survival. The programming didn't just vanish because I saw a spreadsheet. It fought back. I almost logged back in. I almost set up a small transfer. Just $500. Just enough to cover groceries. Just in case. But then I remembered the photo. I closed my eyes and summoned the image of Sienna in the airport. I summoned the caption, "She is the one who makes us proud." I remembered the silence of my apartment last night. I remembered the cupcake in the trash. If I gave them $500, they wouldn't spend it on groceries. They would buy Sienna a handbag or a dinner in Montmartre. I am not their daughter. I repeated the mantra in my head. I am their plan, and the plan is canceled. I opened a new browser tab on my work computer. I needed to solidify this. I needed to spend the money on something that couldn't be transferred, something that couldn't be stolen. I navigated to the website of the local university. I had been looking at a certification program for months, always closing the tab because the tuition was too expensive compared to my family's needs. Certified Specialist in Physician Practice Management and Revenue Cycle. It was an advanced credential. It would qualify me for a manager-level position. It would prove that I wasn't just a number cruncher, but a strategist. The cost was $1,500 for the accelerated evening course. I didn't have that in my new account yet, but I had my next paycheck coming in 2 days, a paycheck that, for the first time in 5 years, would remain 100% mine. I clicked Enroll. I selected the payment plan option. Pay in full upon course start. I filled out the application. Name, address, employer. When I hit Submit, I felt a wave of vertigo. I had just committed $1,500 to myself, to my brain, to my future. It felt selfish. It felt exorbitant. But then the confirmation email pinged in my inbox. Welcome to the program. Addison, your first class begins on Tuesday. I stared at my name on the screen. It looked different. It looked like a person who mattered. The day passed in a blur of work. I was more productive than I had been in months. The rage was a good fuel. It burned clean. At 5 o'clock, instead of going straight home to eat leftovers and worry about the electric bill, I drove to the mall. I hated the mall. The mall was where Sienna lived. The mall was where money went to die. But today, I had a mission. I walked into a department store. I didn't go to the clearance rack in the basement, where I had bought all my work clothes for the last decade. I went to the women's suiting department on the second floor. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh fabric. I found a navy blue blazer. It was structured, tailored, with sharp lapels and gold buttons. It looked like something a CEO would wear. I looked at the price tag. $250. My stomach turned over. $250 was 2 weeks of groceries. It was half a car payment. It is also one dinner for Sienna and Mom in Paris. I thought viciously. I tried it on. I looked in the three-way mirror. The woman staring back at me didn't look like the tired, invisible girl who ate cupcakes alone in the dark. She looked competent. She looked formidable. The jacket made my shoulders look broader, my posture straighter. I bought it. I also bought a pair of matching trousers and a silk blouse in a cream color that I would never usually dare to wear because it stains too easily. Debit or credit? The sales associate asked. Debit, I said, handing her my new card, my life fund card. I walked out of the store carrying the heavy paper bag. It swung against my leg, a tangible weight. I had just spent nearly $300 on myself in 20 minutes. The sky didn't fall. The ground didn't open up to swallow me whole. I drove home. The apartment was still dark, still quiet, but it felt different now. It felt like a bunker, a command center. I hung the new suit on the outside of my closet door so I could see it from my bed. It was my armor for the war that was coming. I sat on my bed and pulled out my phone. I hadn't opened social media all day. I knew if I did, I would see more photos of Paris. I would see Sienna eating macarons. I would see my parents smiling in front of the Louvre, looking younger and happier than they ever looked when they were asking me for money. I didn't want to see them. I wanted them to see me, but not the old me. I opened Instagram. I selected a photo from my camera roll. It wasn't a selfie. I hated selfies. It was a picture I had taken moments ago. Just my hand, holding the acceptance letter for the revenue cycle program. With the sleeve of the new navy blazer visible at the wrist, it was professional. It was cold. It was successful. I typed the caption. I didn't want to rant. I didn't want to explain. I wanted to leave a riddle that would haunt them when they finally scrolled past it. 30. No more begging to be seen. Investing in the only asset that matters. Me. I hit post. I watched the progress bar slide across the top of the screen. Posted. I put the phone on the nightstand. Face up. I lay back on the pillows and stared at the suit hanging on the door. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. Then, it began. Bzzzt. A like from a friend from college. Bzzzt. A comment from Janelle at work. Yes, girl. You deserve it. Bzzzt. 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 Then, the long vibration. A call. I looked at the screen. The name lit up the dark room. Dad. My heart kicked against my ribs, hard and painful. This was it. It was the 15th. The automatic transfer I had canceled last night would have normally hit their account by now, or at least shown as pending. Or maybe they had tried to use the card for dinner and it had been declined. Or maybe they just saw the post and sensed a disturbance in the force, a shift in the gravity that had held them up for so long. I watched the name Dad flash on the screen. I reached out my hand. My fingers hovered over the red decline button. In the past, I would have answered on the first ring. I would have been apologizing before I even knew what was wrong. "I'm sorry. Dad, is everything okay?" "I'll fix it." The phone buzzed again, dancing slightly on the wooden surface of the nightstand. I looked at the navy blazer. I looked at the acceptance letter. I was 30 years old. I tapped the volume button on the side of the phone. The ringing was silenced. The screen continued to flash for another 10 seconds. A silent, frantic plea for attention. Then, it went black. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I didn't block them. Not yet. I wanted to see the desperation grow. I wanted to see the missed calls pile up like the unpaid bills they were about to face. The phone lit up again. Mom. I watched it ring. I watched it go to voicemail. I rolled over and pulled the blanket up. I wasn't shaking anymore. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach, but it was smaller now. It was manageable. I closed my eyes. "Au revoir," I whispered into the darkness. The vibration of the phone against the hard surface of my desk sounded like a drill. It was persistent, angry, and demanding. I had managed to ignore the calls the night before, burying myself under the duvet and pretending I was asleep. But now it was 10 o'clock on a Wednesday morning. I was at my desk at Northbridge Pharma. I had spreadsheets open. I had a job to do, but the phone would not stop. I looked at the screen. Dad. This was the 7th time he had called in the last hour. My coworker, Janelle, poked her head over the gray partition of the cubicle. She looked concerned. "Everything okay, Addie? Your phone is having a seizure." I forced a tight, thin smile. "It is fine. Just family stuff. I should probably take this to stop the noise." "Good luck," she whispered, ducking back down. I took a deep breath, picked up the phone, and walked out into the hallway. I found a quiet corner near the emergency exit stairwell. The air here was cooler, smelling faintly of concrete and floor wax. I slid my thumb across the screen. "Hello?" I didn't say hi, Dad. I just said hello. It was a neutral opening, a business opening. "Addison!" My father's voice exploded into my ear, so loud I had to pull the phone away. He sounded breathless. His voice pitched an octave higher than usual. There was panic there, but it was wrapped in a thick layer of accusatory anger. "Where have you been? Why aren't you answering? Do you have any idea what is happening?" "I am at work, Dad," I said calmly. I stared at the exit sign. The little running man was frozen in mid-stride. "What is the matter?" "The bank! The damn bank is broken!" he shouted. I could hear background noise, traffic, maybe, or the din of a busy hotel lobby. "I am trying to check out of the hotel to move to the other one near the river, and the card declined. The joint card, it declined. Addison? It says insufficient funds." He paused, waiting for me to gasp, waiting for me to rush into fix-it mode. "I tried to log into the app," he continued, the words tumbling out over each other. "But it says my access is restricted or something. I need you to call them right now. Fix it. We are standing at the front desk and the concierge is looking at us like we are criminals. It is humiliating." I leaned my back against the cold concrete wall. "It is not a mistake, Dad." There was a silence on the other end, a thick, static-filled silence. "What?" he asked. His voice dropped. The panic shifted instantly to suspicion. "The card declined because there is no money in the account," I said. I spoke slowly, enunciating every syllable. "And you cannot log in because I changed the password." "You... what?" "I withdrew the funds," I said. "I took my money back." "Your money?" He laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. "Addison, are you crazy? That is the family emergency fund. That is our safety net. You can't just take it. That is theft." "Theft?" I repeated the word. It tasted bitter. "Theft is taking $64,000 of someone else's savings and spending it on luxury handbags and first-class tickets. I didn't steal anything. Dad, I just closed the bank." "You listen to me." His voice turned guttural. the authoritative tone he used when I was a teenager and missed curfew. "Put that money back, right now. We are in a foreign country. We need that money for the hotel. We need it for food. Do you want your mother to starve in Paris?" "I want you to use the money you apparently have," I said. "You spent $10,000 on flights. You spent $5,000 on an apartment deposit for Sienna. Surely, if you can afford all that, you can afford lunch." "That was different," he spluttered. We were moving money around. That was an investment in your sister's future. The emergency fund is for emergencies." "Is Paris an emergency, Dad?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. "Is a $1,200 sequin dress an emergency? Is a spa weekend in Florida an emergency?" "You have been spying on us?" he hissed. "You have been snooping?" "I have been auditing," I corrected him. "And the audit is finished. The account is empty. I suggest you check your return flight policy. Maybe you can get a refund on the upgrades. Addison Perry, if you do not transfer that money back within 10 minutes, I swear to God—" "You will what?" I cut him off. "You will ground me? You will send me to my room? I am 30 years old. I pay my own rent. I pay my own bills. And as of yesterday, I am done paying yours." "Here is your mother," he snarled, and I heard the phone fumble. "Addison?" My mother's voice was different. She didn't shout. She went straight for the throat with a whimpering, high-pitched tone that usually made my knees weak with guilt. "Addie, baby, what are you doing?" she cried. "Dad is shaking. He is shaking all over. You know his heart isn't good. Do you want to give him a heart attack? Over money?" "Stop it, Mom," I said. "Dad's heart is fine. He is just embarrassed because his credit card didn't work." "We are a family," she wailed. "Families help each other. We raised you. We sacrificed everything for you girls. And now, when we finally have a chance to enjoy ourselves a little bit, you want to ruin it? You want to punish us because we took a little trip?" "A little trip?" I laughed, a harsh sound in the quiet stairwell. "Mom, you drained the account. You took every penny I saved for 5 years. You didn't leave enough for a funeral, let alone an emergency. We were going to put it back," she lied. I knew she was lying. She knew she was lying. "We were just borrowing it." "Sienna needed a boost. She has been so down lately. Addie, she needed this win. Why can't you be happy for your sister? Why do you have to be so jealous and selfish?" The word hit me like a slap. Selfish. I had driven a car with a taped-up bumper for 3 years so they could have a cushion. I had eaten ramen noodles while they ate steak at the Gilded Palm. "I am not jealous," I said quietly. "I am just broke, or I was, until I stopped letting you rob me." "You are shaming this family," she spat, her voice dropping the victim act and revealing the venom underneath. "If the relatives find out you cut us off while we were overseas, you will never hear the end of it. Aunt Margie will be disgusted. Everyone will know what a cold-hearted, ungrateful daughter you are." "Tell them," I said. "Tell Aunt Margie. Tell everyone. But if you tell them, be sure to show them the bank statements, because I have them all downloaded. Mom, I have the receipts. I have the check for Sienna's apartment. If you want to make this a public trial, I am ready to present the evidence." There was a gasp on the other end. She hadn't expected that. She thought I would fold at the threat of public shame. She didn't realize that the shame was their weapon, not mine. "I have to get back to work," I said. "Figure it out. You are adults. You have credit cards of your own. Max them out. It is not my problem anymore." I hung up. My hands were trembling now, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from the sheer physical exertion of holding up a boundary that had been trampled on for decades. I walked back to my desk. I couldn't focus on the numbers. The screen blurred. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up again. Sienna. I stared at the name, a FaceTime request. I shouldn't have answered. I should have let it ring. But a morbid curiosity took over. I wanted to see her. I wanted to see the face of the person who made them so proud. I accepted the call, but I didn't turn on my camera. I just watched her. The screen filled with light. Sienna was standing on a cobblestone street. The sky behind her was a brilliant, piercing blue, the exact opposite of the gray sludge outside my window. She was wearing a beret, an actual red beret, and she was holding a croissant. "Addie," she squealed. The connection was a little laggy. "Oh my God, why is your camera off? Are you at work? Look where I am." She spun the camera around. I saw a blur of cafes, old buildings, and people walking by in scarves. It looked like a movie set. "It is literally magical here," she gushed. Turning the camera back to her face, she looked flawless. Her skin was glowing. She looked like she had never worried about a bill in her life. "We just left the hotel. Dad was having some issue with the front desk. He was shouting at the poor guy. It was so embarrassing. So I just walked out here to get a pastry." She didn't know. They hadn't told her. Of course they hadn't. They wouldn't want to ruin her vibe. They wouldn't want her to know that the magic carpet ride was fueled by her sister's stolen wages. "Happy birthday for yesterday, by the way," she added, chewing on the croissant. "I totally meant to text you, but the time difference is so weird, and we were at this amazing dinner. I had escargot. Can you believe it? Me eating snails." "Sounds expensive," I said. My voice was dry. "Oh, totally," she laughed. "But Mom said not to worry about it. She said you helped out with the trip. That was so sweet of you. Addie, seriously, I know you are usually super stingy with money, like you never want to do anything fun, so it was a huge surprise that you pitched in for us." I felt the blood drain from my face. Stingy. Pitched in. She thought I had given them a gift. She thought I was a donor. She had no idea I was a victim. "I didn't pitch in, Sienna," I said. "What?" She frowned, looking at the screen. "I can't hear you." "The signal is bad. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks. You are the best big sis. Oh, I see a Sephora. I have to go. I want to see if the French products are different. Love you. Bye." The screen went black. She had hung up before I could tell her the truth, before I could shatter her little bubble. I sat there, staring at my reflection in the black glass of the phone. Stingy. That was the narrative. I was the boring one, the cheap one, the one who stayed home. And when I finally gave them everything I had, they twisted it so that I was still the boring one, just a useful one. I felt a coldness settle over me that was permanent. I opened my settings. I scrolled to the block list. I tapped Add New. I selected Dad. Block contact? You will not receive phone calls, messages, or FaceTime from people on the block list. I tapped Block. I selected Mom. Block. I hesitated on Sienna. She didn't know. She was just a spoiled child in a woman's body, playing dress-up in Paris. But she was part of the parasite. She was the mouth that fed on my labor. I selected Sienna. Block. The silence that followed was absolute. I put the phone down. I stood up and walked to the bathroom. I needed to wash my face. I pushed open the door to the office restroom. It was empty. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I gripped the edge of the porcelain sink and looked into the mirror. I looked tired. There were dark circles under my eyes. My hair was pulled back in a severe bun. I looked like a woman who had been fighting a war for a long time. But there was something else in my eyes. A hardness. A spark. I straightened my spine. I adjusted the collar of my blouse. I wasn't the daughter who begged for a crumb of affection anymore. I wasn't the sister who waited for a text message that never came. I was Addison Perry. I had $400 in the bank, a new suit, and a spine made of steel. They were in Paris with no money. I was in Cincinnati with my freedom. I washed my hands, drying them thoroughly on a paper towel. I tossed the towel in the trash. "Figure it out," I said to the mirror. I walked back to my desk and opened the spreadsheet. I had work to do. And for the first time, I wasn't working for them. The weeks that followed my 30th birthday were a blur of caffeine, fluorescent lights, and the kind of exhaustion that settles deep in your marrow. But for the first time in my life, it was a clean exhaustion. It was the fatigue of building something, not the fatigue of carrying someone else's dead weight. My life split into two distinct shifts. From 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon, I was the model employee at Northbridge Pharma. I reconciled accounts. I chased down variances, and I did it with a terrified efficiency because I knew I needed every cent of that paycheck. Then, from 6 in the evening until 9 at night, I was a student. The classroom at the university satellite campus was sterile, smelling of dry erase markers and floor wax. I sat in the front row. I took notes as if my life depended on it. Because in a very real way, it did. The certification for revenue cycle management was not just a piece of paper. It was my exit strategy. It was the difference between being a clerk who processed data and a manager who controlled it. It was grueling. There were nights when I drove home with the windows down and the radio off, just trying to keep my eyes open, my brain swimming with medical coding and compliance regulations. I was eating peanut butter toast for dinner over the sink at 10 o'clock at night. I was skipping happy hours. I was wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation, but I was free. Every time I swiped my debit card to pay for a textbook or a coffee, and the machine beeped approved, I felt a little jolt of victory. The balance in my life fund was growing, slowly, painfully slowly. But it was growing in one direction. Up. It wasn't bleeding out to pay for sequin dresses or trips to Paris. I was not doing this entirely alone. In my Tuesday night class, I met Marcus. Marcus was about 40, a guy with graying temples and a cynical sense of humor who was retraining after a layoff from the auto industry. We bonded over the shared misery of the vending machine coffee during the 15-minute break. One rainy Tuesday, about 3 weeks into the course, we were sitting on a bench outside the lecture hall. I was rubbing my temples, trying to stave off a headache. "You look like you are carrying the weight of the world." "Addison," Marcus said, taking a sip of his terrible coffee. "What is chasing you? Debt? Ex-husband?" I laughed. A short, dry sound. "Family," I said. "I cut them off financially. They are not taking it well." I gave him the abbreviated version, the Paris trip, the drained account, the blocked numbers. Marcus listened without interrupting. He didn't give me the pity look. He didn't say, "But they are your parents." He just nodded, like he was inspecting a faulty engine part. "That is not a family," Marcus said bluntly. "That is a subscription service you finally canceled." I looked at him, surprised by the harshness of the metaphor. "You think I am cold?" I asked. "I think you are surviving," he said. "People like that, takers, they do not change. Addison, they just find a new host. You detach the feeding tube. Of course they are screaming, but do not mistake their screaming for love. It is just withdrawal." He was right. I knew he was right. But hearing it from a stranger, a man who had lived a whole life before meeting me, made it solidify in my mind. At work, Janelle became my anchor. She was the only one who knew the full extent of the fallout, since I had blocked my parents and Sienna on my phone. They had not just disappeared, they had adapted. They couldn't call, so they emailed. Every day, I would open my personal inbox to a barrage of subject lines. Subject: "Please read. Emergency." Subject: "How can you do this to us?" Subject: "Mom is sick." Subject: "Sienna is crying." I showed them to Janelle one lunch break. We were sitting in the break room, eating salads from Tupperware containers. "Look at the timestamps," Janelle pointed out, pointing her plastic fork at the screen. Email 1. "I love you. Please come back." Sent at 9 in the morning. Email 2. "You are a selfish brat." Sent at 11. Email 3. "We are going to lose the house." Sent at 2. "It is manic," I said, feeling that familiar twist of guilt in my gut. "Maybe Mom really is sick?" Janelle shook her head. "Addie, look at me. If your mom was really sick, like hospital sick, would they be emailing you? Or would they be calling your work line? Would they be calling the police to do a welfare check on you? They are fishing. They are throwing bait in the water to see what you bite on. Guilt, anger, fear, they do not care what brings you back, as long as you come back with your checkbook." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Do not reply," she said. "The moment you reply, even if it is just to say leave me alone, you reset the clock. You teach them that if they harass you for 3 weeks, they get a response. Hold the line. So I held the line. I created a filter in my email. Any message containing the words Mom, Dad, or Sienna skipped my inbox and went straight to a folder I named the Archive. I didn't delete them. I needed the evidence, but I stopped looking at them every hour. I checked the folder once a week, on Friday afternoons, like a chore. The silence allowed my brain to fire on cylinders I didn't know I had. In class, I wasn't just passing, I was dominating. The logic of revenue cycles, the complex puzzle of insurance denials and appeals, it made sense to me. It was a world where rules mattered. If you followed the rules, you got paid. If you broke the rules, you didn't. It was fair. It was the opposite of my family dynamic. My instructor, Dr. Holloway, was a stern woman who rarely smiled. She was the director of finance at a large regional hospital system. In the 6th week, she asked me to stay after class. I packed my bag slowly, heart pounding. Had I messed up an assignment? Addison, she said, leaning against her desk, you have a knack for this. You spot discrepancies in the case studies before anyone else. I have had a lot of practice looking for missing money, I said. Before I could stop myself, she raised an eyebrow, but didn't pry. Rivergate Medical Center has an opening. It is a senior revenue analyst position. It is a step up from what you are doing now. The pay is significantly better. I think you should apply. Me? I blinked. I do not have the management experience yet. You have the aptitude, she said, and I will write you a recommendation. Do not waste your time underselling yourself. You are ready. I walked out to the parking lot that night feeling like I was floating. The rain was still falling, but it felt like baptismal water. I applied the next day. The interview was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I used a sick day at Northbridge. I put on the navy blue blazer I had bought with my life fund money. I wore the cream silk blouse. I looked in the mirror and I saw a professional. I saw a woman who commanded respect. The interview was at Rivergate, a massive glass complex that overlooked the river. I sat across from a panel of 3 people. 2 months ago, I would have been sweating. I would have been desperate to please them, smiling too much, apologizing for taking up their space. But I had been forged in the fire of betrayal. I had looked my father in the eye, metaphorically, and told him no. A job interview felt like a cakewalk compared to divorcing your own parents. Tell us about a time you had to handle a complex financial reconciliation, the hiring manager asked. I didn't talk about Northbridge. I talked about the skills. I talked about the forensic attention to detail required to find patterns in data. I treat every ledger like a story, I told them, my voice steady. Numbers do not lie, but people can hide things inside them. My job is to find the truth that the numbers are trying to tell. I am disciplined. I do not give up until the balance is 0. I saw the hiring manager nod. I saw them write down the word disciplined. I walked out of there knowing I had the job. I didn't hope for it. I knew it. 2 days later, the offer letter came. The salary was $20,000 more than I was making. $20,000. I sat at my kitchen table, the offer letter open on my laptop screen. I did the math. With this salary, I could move to a better apartment in 6 months. I could buy a car that didn't rattle when I hit 60 miles an hour. I could save for a house that no one could take away from me. I printed the letter. I signed it. I was doing it. I was actually doing it. I was building a life from the ashes of the one they had burned down. That Friday, I came home late. I had gone out for a celebratory drink with Janelle and Marcus. Just one drink, because I was still counting pennies. But it was the first time I had toasted to my own success without a shadow hanging over me. I walked into my apartment building and checked my mailbox in the lobby. It was mostly junk mail, a flyer for pizza, a catalog, and one white envelope. It looked official. It had a plastic window for the address. I pulled it out. The return address was a bank, not my new bank, not the credit union, a major national credit card issuer, First National Trust. My heart gave a strange, syncopated thump. I didn't have a First National Trust card. I had never applied for one. I looked at the addressee. Addison Perry. That was me. I looked at the address below my name. It was my address, my apartment number, but then I looked closer at the plastic window. There was a small line of text above my name, partially obscured. I tapped the envelope to shake the paper down. Account ending in 4490. I walked up the stairs to my apartment, the envelope burning a hole in my hand. I unlocked my door, threw my bag on the couch, and ripped the envelope open. It was a notice of delinquency. Dear Ms. Perry, we are writing to inform you that the minimum payment of $350 on your Platinum Rewards Visa was not received by the due date of January 15th. Your account is now past due. Please remit payment immediately to avoid further penalties and negative reporting to credit bureaus. I stared at the letter. I didn't have a Platinum Rewards Visa. I looked at the balance summary. Total outstanding balance, $15,420. $15,000. I felt the room spin. I had to grab the back of a chair to steady myself. I looked at the transaction dates listed on the summary. They went back 6 months. July 12th, Home Depot, $2,000. August 4th, Best Buy, $1,500. And then, I saw the address listed in the account holder details section at the bottom of the page. Addison Perry. Co-applicant, Howard Perry. Billing address, 42 Oak Street, West Cincinnati. 42 Oak Street, my parents' house. The blood drained from my face so fast I felt dizzy. They hadn't just used the joint account. At some point, months ago, maybe a year ago, they had opened a credit card. They had used my name. They had used my social security number, which they had. Of course they had it. They were my parents. They had made me the primary account holder, or a co-signer, and listed their address for the billing statement so I would never see them. They had been racking up debt in my name for months, $15,000 of debt. And the reason I was getting this letter now? The reason it had come to my apartment? Because for the first time, they had missed a payment. They had missed the January payment. Why? Because I had drained the cash cow. Because the emergency fund they usually use to pay the minimums on their secret debts was empty. The puzzle pieces slammed together with a sickening crunch. The emergency fund wasn't just for luxury trips. It was a Ponzi scheme. They were using my cash to pay off the interest on debts they had taken out in my name. I sank onto the floor, the letter crumpling in my fist. I wasn't just broke. I wasn't just starting from zero. I was negative $15,000. And my credit score, the one thing I had protected with my life, the one thing that was going to get me that new apartment and that new life, was about to be assassinated. I looked at the phone numbers I had blocked. The silence of the last few weeks wasn't them giving up. It was the calm before the creditors started calling. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I stood up. I walked to my desk. I smoothed out the crumpled letter and placed it next to the laptop. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This wasn't drama. This was identity theft. And I knew exactly what I had to do. I sat on the floor of my living room, the notice of delinquency from First National Trust lying on the carpet like a dead leaf. My hands were cold, the kind of cold that starts in the chest and radiates out to the fingertips, numbing everything it touches. I had thought the battle was over the $400 in the checking account. I had thought it was about the $60,000 they had siphoned over 5 years. I was wrong. Those were just the skirmishes. This letter was the declaration of a nuclear war. I stood up and walked to my laptop. I moved like a machine. There was no room for panic. Panic is messy. Panic makes you miss details. I needed to be surgical. I navigated to the website of one of the major credit bureaus. I had never felt the need to check my full credit report before. I had a credit score of 780. I paid my bills on time. I assumed that was enough. I paid the fee for the instant. Comprehensive report. I answered the security questions. What was the make of your first car? Honda. What street did you live on in 2018? Maple Avenue. The screen loaded. A wheel spun for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Then, the dashboard appeared. My eyes went immediately to the total debt summary. I expected to see my small student loan balance. I expected to see the unauthorized $15,000 on the First National Trust card I had just discovered. I did not expect to see the number that was actually there. Total outstanding debt, $112,450. I stopped breathing. $112,000. I blinked, waiting for the numbers to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. I clicked on the Accounts tab, my finger hitting the trackpad with a force that almost cracked the plastic. I scrolled past the First National Trust card. There it was. Homeland Financial Services. Account type, Home Equity. Line of credit, HELOC. Status, open/active, balance, $95,000. Co-borrower, Addison Perry. Primary borrower, Howard Perry. Collateral, 42 Oak Street. My parents' house. They had taken out a second mortgage on their house. And because their credit was likely in the gutter, destroyed by years of living beyond their means, they had added me to the loan. I clicked on the account details, opened. October 14th. 2 years ago. 2 years ago. I closed my eyes and tried to travel back in time. October 2 years ago. I had visited them for a weekend. My father had been in high spirits. He had talked about doing some renovations to the house. He had asked me to look at some paperwork for him. Something about insurance. He said, "Just sign here, Addie, as a witness. It is just so the insurance company knows we have a beneficiary." I had signed it. I hadn't read the fine print. I was eating a slice of my mother's apple pie at the time. I was trusting them. They had tricked me into co-signing a $95,000 loan, and they had spent it, all of it. I looked at the payment history. Late payment, minimum payment only. They had been using the money I sent them to pay the minimums on this massive debt, keeping the scheme afloat just long enough to bleed it dry. And now that I had cut off the cash flow, the house of cards was collapsing. If they defaulted on this loan, the bank wouldn't just take their house. They would come for me. They would garnish my wages. They would destroy my credit. They would take the future I was trying so hard to build and burn it to the ground. I grabbed my phone. My thumb hovered over the unblock button for my father. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to hear him try to explain this. But I stopped. Janelle's voice echoed in my head. Do not reset the clock. If I called them now, I would be reacting emotionally. I would be giving them information. I would be letting them know that I was afraid. I needed a weapon. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Financial Fraud Attorney Cincinnati. I didn't choose the one with the flashiest website. I chose the one with the most reviews mentioning identity theft and family fraud. His name was David Gentry. His office was downtown, 3 blocks from where Sienna's luxury apartment sat empty and unpaid for. I called his office. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, but a receptionist answered. "I need an emergency consultation," I said. "I have just discovered I am a victim of familial identity theft involving a 6-figure sum. Can you come in tomorrow at 8? She asked. "I will be there," I said. That night, I didn't sleep. I worked. I printed everything. I printed the credit report. I printed the First National Trust letter. I printed the bank statements from the joint account showing the cash withdrawals that matched the dates of the loan payments. I built a timeline. October 14th. Loan opened. October 20th. $20,000 withdrawn. October 21st. Sienna posts photo of new car. December 1st. $5,000 withdrawn. December 2nd. Mom posts photo of new living room furniture. It wasn't home improvement. It was life improvement. They had eaten the equity of their house, and they had served me the bill. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I sat in a leather chair in David Gentry's office. He was a man in his 50s, wearing a gray suit that looked like it had seen a lot of courtrooms. He had kind eyes but a mouth that was set in a grim line. He listened to me for 20 minutes. He looked at my spreadsheet. He looked at the credit report. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet and very serious. "Addison, "You need to understand exactly what this is," he said. "This is not a misunderstanding. This is a felony. Several felonies. Actually, wire fraud, identity theft, forgery." "I know," I said. I need to get my name off that loan. I need to get my name off that credit card." David Gentry leaned forward, clasping his hands on the desk. "There is only one way to do that," he said. "The banks will not release you from the debt just because you say you didn't know about it. As far as they are concerned, you signed the papers. You benefited from the association." "So what do I do?" I asked. "You have to file a police report," he said. "You have to file a sworn affidavit of identity theft, stating that your parents used your information without your consent and forged your signature. You have to formally accuse them of a crime." The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. "If I do that," I whispered, "what happens to them?" "They will face a criminal investigation," he said. "They could face fines, probation, potentially prison time, given the amount of money involved. But more immediately, the bank will freeze their accounts. The house will likely be foreclosed upon to recover the debt." I stared at the bookshelf behind him. I saw a picture of him with his own family. They looked happy. "Is there another way?" I asked. "The other way," he said, "is that you accept the debt. You pay off the $112,000 plus interest. You let them ruin your credit for the next 7 years. You let them drag you under." He handed me a pen. "It is a binary choice. Addison, you are either the victim or you are the co-conspirator. There is no middle ground." I thought about the cupcake in the trash. I thought about the emergency fund. I thought about Sienna in Paris. Eating croissants while I sat in this office discussing felonies. They hadn't hesitated. When they forged my signature, they hadn't paused to think. Will this hurt Addie? They had only thought, we want this money. They had treated me like an object, a resource. I took the pen. "What is the first step?" I asked. "We draft the letters," he said. "We freeze your credit across all 3 bureaus immediately, so they cannot open anything else. Then, we send a dispute letter to the lenders with the police report attached." We spent the next 2 hours drafting. It was brutal work. I had to detail every instance of suspicion, every lie. By the time I left his office, my credit was frozen. No one, not me, not my parents, not even the President of the United States, could open a line of credit in my name without a PIN code that only I possessed. I walked out into the sunlight. I felt lighter. But it was a terrifying lightness. The way you feel after you jump out of a plane and you are waiting for the parachute to open. I went to the police station next. I filed the report. The officer was sympathetic but efficient. He gave me a case number 2026-8944. That number was my shield. I went back to work. I sat at my desk at Northbridge Pharma. But I didn't open my regular work. I opened my personal email. I checked the archive folder, the one where their emails went to die. There was a new one, sent 20 minutes ago. Subject: urgent, bank error. Addison, something is wrong. We tried to use the home equity card to pay for the hotel bill because the other card is still not working, and the machine said, "Card confiscated, contact issuer." I called the bank and they said the account is under fraud review. Did you do something? Call us immediately. We are scared. They were scared, not because they were stranded, not because they were hungry. They were scared because the word fraud had been spoken. They knew. Deep down, they knew what they had done. They had just assumed I would never have the backbone to call it what it was. I opened a new email. I addressed it to my father, my mother, and I CC'd Sienna. I attached the PDF of the police report. I attached the letter from David Gentry's office. I didn't write a long, emotional letter. I didn't ask them why they did it. I didn't tell them how much they had hurt me. I wrote 3 sentences. I have discovered the fraudulent loans taken out in my name. I have filed a police report and initiated a fraud investigation with the lenders. Do not contact me again, or my lawyer will file for a restraining order. I hit send. Then, I turned off my phone. I sat there in the quiet of my cubicle. I could feel the invisible threads that had tied me to them for 30 years snapping. One by one, the thread of duty. Snap. The thread of guilt. Snap. The thread of hope that they would one day love me for me, and not for what I could give them. Snap. It hurt. It hurt worse than anything I had ever felt. It felt like I was amputating my own limb, but as I looked at the police report on my screen, at the case number that officially designated me as a victim, I realized something. They had thrown me into the ocean to keep themselves afloat. They had climbed on my back, pushing my head under the water so they could breathe. I wasn't drowning anymore. I had a knife, and I had just cut the rope. I took a deep breath. I opened my study guide for the revenue cycle exam. I had a future to pay for, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't paying for theirs. The digital silence I had imposed upon my life lasted exactly 48 hours. I had assumed that my email with the police report attached would act as a silencer. A heavy blanket thrown over a fire. I thought the sheer legal weight of the case number 2026-8944, would scare them into a retreat. I thought they would huddle in their unpaid Paris hotel room, terrified of the consequences, and go dark while they figured out how to navigate the wreckage they had created. I was wrong. I had underestimated the survival instinct of a narcissist. When a narcissist is cornered with facts, they do not apologize, they do not reflect, they spin. It started on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting on my couch, organizing my study notes for the upcoming revenue cycle exam. My phone was on the coffee table, face up. I had kept the notifications on for my social media apps, mostly because I used them to keep in touch with a few friends from college and to follow industry news. The screen lit up. Facebook. You have been tagged in a post by Deborah Perry. My stomach gave a hard, violent lurch. My mother. I hadn't blocked them on Facebook yet. It was an oversight, in my haste to block their numbers and filter their emails. I had forgotten that the oldest and most effective weapon in my mother's arsenal was not financial. It was social. I picked up the phone. My finger hovered over the notification. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it would be poison. But I had to know the blast radius. I tapped the screen. The post opened. It was a photo of my parents from years ago, when I was a child and Sienna was a toddler. We were smiling. It was a lie of a photo, taken moments after my mother had pinched my arm for slouching, but to the world, it looked like domestic bliss. The caption was a wall of text. A mother's heart is a fragile thing. You give your children everything. You give them your life, your sweat, your tears. You sacrifice your own dreams so they can have a future, and you hope, you pray, that when they grow up, they will remember that love. But sometimes, the world turns them cold. It is a sharp pain, sharper than a serpent's tooth, to have a thankless child, to be abandoned in a time of need by the one you trusted most. We are in Paris, supposed to be celebrating family, but instead we are heartbroken. Betrayal doesn't come from strangers, it comes from your own blood. Please pray for us, and pray for her, that she finds her way back to the values we taught her. Addison Perry, we love you, no matter what you have done to us. I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. She hadn't mentioned the money. She hadn't mentioned the stolen credit cards. She hadn't mentioned the forged signatures or the $95,000 home equity line of credit. She had painted a masterpiece of vague victimhood. She had weaponized the concept of family to make me look like a monster who had abandoned her elderly parents in a foreign country. And the comments were already rolling in. Aunt Margie. Oh, Deb, I am so sorry. What happened? Is she okay? Cousin Mike. Unbelievable. After everything you guys did for her? Stay strong. Aunt Deb. Neighbor Susan. Praying for you all. Kids these days just don't understand gratitude. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. It wasn't embarrassment. It was fury. It was a cold, white-hot rage that made my vision sharpen. They were trying to win the court of public opinion because they knew they had already lost the court of law. My phone buzzed again. A direct message from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. "Hey, Addie, I saw your mom's post." "What is going on?" "She sounds devastated. You should really call her. You don't want to regret this later." Then another. "Addison, this is Aunt Margie. I don't know what spat you girls are having, but leaving your parents stranded in Europe is a new low. Fix this." They were swarming. The flying monkeys were descending, armed with guilt and half-truths, ready to peck me into submission. My thumb moved to the comment box. I wanted to type. I wanted to scream. I wanted to write, "She stole my identity. She spent $100,000 in my name. She is a criminal." But I stopped. I took a deep breath. I put the phone down on the table. Do not engage emotionally. I told myself, that is what she wants. She wants a fight. She wants me to look unstable. She wants me to look like the angry, hysterical daughter. I needed to be the CFO of my own disaster. I walked to my laptop. I opened the folder where I kept the evidence. I opened the PDF of the police report. I took a screenshot of the first page, carefully cropping it so only the header, the case number, and the summary of the charge were visible. Offense: identity theft/fraud. Victim: Addison Perry. Status: active investigation. Then I opened the credit report. I took a screenshot of the home equity line of credit section. Showing the dates and the status, I used a photo editing tool to draw thick black lines over the account numbers and my parents' address. I redacted the sensitive data, but I left the undeniable facts exposed. Co-borrower: Addison Perry. Signature date: October 14th, 2024. I crafted my response. It took me 20 minutes to write 3 sentences. I deleted every adjective. I deleted every emotion. I went back to Facebook. I didn't comment on her post. That was her territory. I posted on my own wall, and I set the privacy to public. I uploaded the image of the police report header and the redacted credit line. The caption read, "I typically keep my private life private, but given the public statements made regarding my character today, I am forced to clarify the situation. I have recently discovered that my identity was used without my consent to secure 6 figures of debt, including a second mortgage and credit cards. Over the last 2 years, this is not a family dispute. This is a financial crime. I have filed a police report, case 2026-8944, and am currently working with the fraud department to resolve these unauthorized accounts. I will not be commenting further." I hit post. I sat back and watched. The effect was instantaneous. It was like dropping a bomb into a crowded room. The noise didn't stop. It just changed frequency. The comments on my mother's post stopped abruptly. Then, the notifications on my post started. Janelle. Holy. Addie. I am so sorry. Marcus. Good for you. Stand your ground. Then, the family started to see it. Cousin Mike, who had just called me unbelievable on my mother's thread, deleted his comment. Aunt Margie went silent. But then, something unexpected happened. A notification popped up from someone I hadn't thought about in a decade. Valerie Vance commented on your post. Valerie, my father's older sister, the black sheep of the family because she had moved to Chicago in the 80s and refused to lend my father money for one of his failed business ventures in the 90s. I hadn't seen her since I was 12. I clicked on the notification. Valerie Vance. Addison, I am proud of you for standing up for yourself. I watched them do this to your grandmother, and I watched them try to do it to me. I always wondered when they would turn on their own children. You are breaking a cycle that has been rotting this family tree for 40 years. If you need a lawyer in Chicago, or just an ear, call me. I stared at the comment. Tears pricked my eyes. Real tears. Not the angry ones. I watched them do this to your grandmother. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just a mistake. It was a pathology. It was a generational curse that Valerie had escaped. And now, I was escaping too. I liked her comment. I didn't reply yet, but the validation felt like armor plating. Then, the big one hit. Sienna. Sienna wasn't tagged in my post, but she followed me. She followed our cousins. She lived on her phone. 5 minutes after I posted the police report, my phone lit up with a text from her. Addie, what is that? I didn't reply. Addie, answer me. What do you mean, identity theft? Mom said you were just mad because they went on a trip without you. I didn't reply. Addie, is that why the card isn't working? And then, a minute later, wait, the police report says October 14th. That is the week I got my car. I watched the 3 little dots dance on the screen. She was typing. She was stopping. She was thinking. For the first time in her life. Sienna was doing the math. And the apartment deposit. Addie, did they pay for my apartment with a loan in your name? She wasn't stupid. She was spoiled. Yes, she was sheltered. Yes, but she wasn't stupid. She knew, deep down, that our parents didn't have money. She had just chosen to believe the fairy tale because the fairy tale came with free rent and designer bags. But seeing a police report number shattered the glass. Addie, I am scared. Mom is screaming at Dad in the hotel room right now because someone sent her a screenshot of your post. They are saying you are going to send them to jail. Is that true? I broke my silence. I sent one text back. I am not sending them to jail. Sienna. They sent themselves to jail when they forged my signature. I am just the one who turned on the lights. She didn't reply, but my mother did. The Facebook post hadn't worked. The guilt trip had backfired. The public shaming had turned into a public exposure of their crimes. So she switched tactics. She went from the weeping mother to the cornered animal. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, the voicemail icon appeared. I played it on speaker. Addison, it was my mother. Her voice was ice cold. There were no tears now. You take that post down. Right now. Do you hear me? You are humiliating us. You are airing dirty laundry for the whole world to see. If you do not delete that post in 5 minutes, I'm going to call your boss at Northbridge. I will tell them you are unstable. I will tell them you are stealing from the company. I will ruin you. Addison, I brought you into this world, and I can take you out of it. You think you are so smart with your police reports? You are nothing without us. The message ended with a click. My hand shook slightly as I hit save. She had just handed me more evidence. Extortion. Blackmail. I forwarded the audio file to my lawyer, David Gentry. Then, I sat back. She threatened to call Northbridge. She didn't know I had already resigned. She didn't know I had a new job at Rivergate Medical Center starting in 2 weeks. She was threatening a ghost, but the malice in her voice. It was clarifying. There was no love there. There was only possession. She didn't miss her daughter. She missed her asset. She was angry because her property had spoken up. I went back to Facebook. I didn't delete the post. Instead, I went to my privacy settings. I changed my profile visibility. I locked it down. No one could see my posts unless they were friends. I went through my friends list and I started culling. Aunt Margie, unfriend. Cousin Mike, unfriend. Neighbor Susan, unfriend. I cut them away like dead branches. I left Aunt Valerie. Then, I deactivated my account temporarily. I didn't need to see the comments anymore. I had said what I needed to say. The truth was out there. I had planted the flag. The phone was still buzzing with texts from random relatives, but I didn't read them. I knew what was happening. The family chat groups were on fire. The whispers were spreading. Did you see what Addie posted? A police report? Howard and Deborah committed fraud? Valerie said she saw it coming. My parents had tried to use the court of public opinion to silence me. Instead, they had inadvertently sworn in the jury. I walked to the window of my apartment. The rain had stopped. The streetlights were reflecting on the wet pavement. I was alone in my apartment. I had no parents I could talk to. My sister was in Paris, waking up to a nightmare. My extended family was in chaos. But I felt a strange sense of peace. The secret was out. The shame wasn't mine to carry anymore. I had given it back to them, where it belonged. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the window. Let them talk, I said aloud. I turned away from the window and went back to my desk. I had an exam to pass. I had a career to build. And tomorrow, I had a meeting with a real estate agent to look for a new apartment, one that no one in my family knew the address of. The war wasn't over, but the battlefield had shifted, and for the first time, I had the high ground. The knock on my door came 3 days later. At 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, I was not expecting anyone. My social circle had been pruned down to the essentials: Janelle, Marcus, and my lawyer. I had changed the locks on my apartment the day after I filed the police report, a paranoid but necessary expense that had cost me $200. I approached the peephole with caution, clutching my phone in my hand, ready to dial 911 if I saw my father's face distorted by the fisheye lens. It wasn't my father, it was Sienna. But it was not the Sienna from the Instagram photos. There was no beret, there was no champagne glass, there was no ring light making her skin glow. She was wearing an oversized gray hoodie that looked stained, black leggings, and sneakers that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, and her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing pale skin and dark, bruised circles under her eyes. She looked small, for the first time in her life. She didn't look like the main character. She looked like an extra who had been left behind on set after the lights went out. She had a single suitcase standing next to her. I unlocked the door, but I didn't open it wide. I blocked the entrance with my body. "I am not giving you money, Sienna," I said. My voice was low and steady. "And you are not moving in. If Mom and Dad sent you here to play the pitiful card, you can turn around and go back to the airport." Sienna didn't flinch. She didn't put on her usual pout. She just looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears. Not the pretty, single tear rolling down the cheek kind she used to get out of speeding tickets. These were ugly, hot tears that made her eyes red. "They didn't send me," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "I ran away." I hesitated. "Where are they?" "They are still in Paris," she said. "They are trying to figure out how to pay the hotel bill so they can get their passports back from the safe." I left. I changed my flight using the miles I had on my own account. I had to get away from them. "Addie." She looked down at her sneakers. "I have nowhere to go," she whispered. "I don't want to sleep here. I know you hate me right now. I needed to see you. I needed to know if it was true." I looked at her for a long moment. My instinct was to slam the door. My instinct was to protect the peace I had fought so hard to build over the last few weeks. But there was something in her posture, a slump of defeat that I recognized because I had worn it myself for 30 years, that made me step back. 5 minutes, I said. "Leave the suitcase in the hall." She nodded and stepped inside. She stood in the middle of my small living room, looking around as if she had never seen it before. She had been here a dozen times, usually to borrow clothes or complain about a boyfriend, but she had never really looked. She saw the stack of textbooks on the table. She saw the new suit hanging on the door. She saw the stark lack of luxury. "It is so quiet here," she said. "It is peaceful," I corrected her. "Sit down." She sat on the edge of the sofa, keeping her hands tucked between her knees. I sat in the armchair opposite her, keeping the coffee table between us like a barricade. "What did you want to know if it was true?" I asked. Sienna took a shaky breath. "The money," she said. "When the card declined at the hotel, Dad put it on speakerphone to yell at the bank representative. He thought it would intimidate them. I heard the transaction history." She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a mixture of horror and shame. "I heard the guy read back the charges. Addie. He listed the transfer for my graduation gift. He listed the deposit for the apartment. He listed the withdrawals that matched the dates we went shopping for my birthday outfit." She swallowed hard. "They always told me Dad had investments. They told me he had a settlement from an old injury lawsuit that paid out every month. They made me feel like we were comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. And you?" "And I what?" I asked. "They told me you were just cheap," she admitted. "Mom used to say you were a miser, that you hoarded your money because you didn't know how to enjoy life." She said you were jealous of me because I knew how to live and you just knew how to work. I felt a bitter laugh bubble up, but I swallowed it. I hoarded my money so I could transfer $1,000 a month into their account. Sienna, I hoarded it so they could buy you that life. I know, she said. Tears spilled over again. I asked them. When we got back to the room, I asked them point blank. I said, "Did this money come from Addison?" And? Mom tried to laugh it off. She said, "We all help each other. That is what families do." But I wouldn't let it go. I pulled up my banking app, I looked at the transfers they sent me, and then I looked at the screenshot you posted. The dates matched perfectly, down to the hour. She wiped her face with her sleeve. I felt sick. Addie, I felt like I was wearing stolen skin. That dress I wore to the party? I burned it. I literally threw it in the trash compactor at the hotel. I couldn't look at it. I watched her. I wanted to believe her. But trust is a fragile thing, and mine had been pulverized. It is not just the cash. Sienna, I said. It is the debt. I reached for the folder on my desk. I pulled out the credit report with the redactions I had made for social media. But this time, I showed her the unredacted version. I slid it across the table. Look at the second page, I said. She picked it up. Her eyes scanned the lines. She gasped when she saw the number. $95,000? She whispered. What is this? That is a home equity line of credit on their house, I said. Co-signed by me. Without my knowledge, they forged my signature 2 years ago. Sienna looked up, her face draining of color. 2 years ago, she murmured. That was when I started the life coaching business. They gave me $20,000 for the website and the branding and the office space. Yes, I said. And then the trip to Cabo, she continued, connecting the dots in real time. And the down payment on my car. She dropped the paper as if it had burned her fingers. They didn't just spend your savings, she said, her voice trembling with a new kind of horror. They mortgaged your future to pay for my hobbies. They mortgaged my future to buy your affection, I corrected her. And to keep up the appearance that they were successful parents, you were the billboard. Sienna, I was just the generator that kept the lights on. Sienna put her face in her hands and began to sob. It was a deep, gut-wrenching sound. I didn't know, she choked out. I swear to God, Addie, I didn't know. I thought I was special. I thought they believed in me, but I was just a leech. You were a prop, I said brutally. But you are an adult now. Ignorance is not a defense anymore. She looked up, her face streaked with tears. I know. That is what I told them. You confronted them about the loan? Yes, she said. After I saw your post, I showed it to them. I said, Addie filed a police report. She says you forged her signature. And do you know what Mom said? I could imagine it. Tell me. She said you were having a mental breakdown. Sienna said. She said you have always been unstable and jealous of me, and that you were making up lies to ruin the family because you couldn't stand seeing us happy in Paris. She said the police report was fake. She said you photoshopped things. And did you believe her? For a second, Sienna admitted, because it is easier to believe your sister is crazy than to believe your parents are criminals. But then Dad started crying. Not sad crying, scared crying. He started talking about jail. He started blaming Mom, saying it was her idea to use your name because you had good credit and they couldn't qualify. She shuddered. That was when I knew, she said. They started eating each other. Mom screamed at him to shut up. Dad screamed that he was too old for prison. They didn't even look at me. I was standing right there, and they didn't care about me anymore. They just cared about their own skins. She took a deep breath and sat up straighter. So I packed my bag. Mom tried to stop me. She grabbed my arm. She said if I left, I was ungrateful. She said I was abandoning the family just like you. She said I would never make it on my own. Sienna looked at me. And for the first time, I saw a flash of the steel that ran in our bloodline, the steel I had used to survive, and the steel she was finally discovering. I told her she was right, Sienna said. I told her I probably wouldn't make it on my own, not at first, but I told her I would rather starve than eat any more of your food. The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at my sister. She was a mess. She was terrified. She was stripping away 26 years of delusion in a single agonizing weekend. So what now? I asked. You are back in Cincinnati. You have no apartment, because I canceled the deposit. You have no job, because being an influencer doesn't pay the rent. What is the plan? Sienna reached into the pocket of her hoodie. She pulled out a small velvet box. She opened it. Inside was a diamond tennis bracelet. It was delicate and expensive. They gave me this for Christmas, she said. They said it was a family heirloom, but I checked the receipt in the box. They bought it at Macy's in November, probably with your money. She snapped the box shut. I am going to the pawn shop on Monday, she said. It is worth at least $2,000. That is first and last month's rent on a studio apartment. Not a luxury loft, a studio, in a bad neighborhood. And then? And then I get a job, she said. A real job. My friend manages a coffee shop in Over the Rhine. She said she needs baristas. It is minimum wage plus tips. I can stand on my feet for 8 hours. I can make coffee. She looked at me with a fierce determination. I am going to pay you back, Addie. I know it is $100,000. I know I can't pay it back on a barista's salary. It might take me 50 years. But I will pay you back for every dress, every trip, every lie. You don't have to pay me back, I said. You didn't steal the money. They did. I spent it, she said firmly. I enjoyed it while you suffered. That makes me responsible. She stood up. I am not asking to stay here, she said. I am staying on my friend's couch tonight. I needed to tell you that I believe you, and I needed to tell you that I am done being their golden child. She walked to the door and picked up her suitcase. Sienna, I said. She turned back, her hand on the doorknob. I haven't forgiven you, I said honest, and I definitely haven't forgiven them. This isn't going to be fixed with one conversation. I am still pressing charges. I am still testifying against them. I know, she said. You should. If they call me to testify, I will tell the truth. I saw the receipts. Okay, I said. Can we make a rule? She asked. A new rule for us? What rule? We don't talk about them, she said. If I see you, or if we talk, we don't talk about Mom and Dad. We don't deliver messages. We don't try to fix it. We just exist, separately from them. I thought about it. It was a good rule. It was a boundary. Deal, I said. And one more thing, she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a large envelope. I brought this. It was on the desk in the hotel room. Dad left it out. She handed it to me. I opened it. It was a stack of papers, not bank statements. These were medical records, but they weren't for my father. They were for my mother. I scanned the top page. It was a consultation summary from a cosmetic surgery clinic in Cincinnati, dated 3 months ago. Procedure: facelift and neck lift. Estimated cost: $18,000. Notes: patient expressed desire to look younger for daughter's upcoming wedding possibilities. I stared at the paper. She wasn't sick, Sienna said bitterly. She wasn't frail. She was planning to spend $20,000 of your credit to get plastic surgery so she would look good in my wedding photos. A wedding I don't even have planned. I laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. Of course she was, I said, because appearance is everything. Not anymore, Sienna said. She opened the door. The hallway light spilled in, casting a long shadow. Good night, Addie, she said. Happy belated birthday. Good night, Sienna, I said. She closed the door. I listened to her footsteps recede down the hallway. I heard the heavy door of the building open and close. I was alone again. I looked at the velvet box she had left on the table. She had forgotten it. Or maybe she had left it on purpose, as a down payment. I picked it up. It was heavy. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. I saw Sienna walking towards the bus stop, dragging her suitcase through the puddles. She looked lonely. She looked cold. But she was walking on her own 2 feet. I didn't feel a surge of warmth. I didn't feel a sudden rush of sisterly love. The damage was too deep for that, but I felt a shifting of the tectonic plates in my chest. For 30 years, I thought Sienna was the enemy. I thought she was the vampire feeding on my life. Tonight, I realized she was just another victim. She was the doll they dressed up, while I was the battery they drained. We were both just parts of their machine. But the machine was broken now. I went back to my desk. I picked up the phone and dialed David Gentry's office number, leaving a voicemail even though it was late. David, it is Addison. My sister is back in the country. She is willing to cooperate, and she has evidence regarding the spending. Add her to the witness list. I hung up. I looked at the stack of textbooks. I had a lot of work to do. But for the first time, the load felt a little lighter, because I wasn't carrying the weight of my sister's resentment anymore. I was just carrying the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was finally setting us both free. It was a Tuesday, 3 days after Sienna had appeared at my door. When the text from my father arrived, I had unblocked him temporarily on the advice of David Gentry. My lawyer, let them reach out. David had said, they are desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. They put things in writing they shouldn't. The message was surprisingly restrained. There were no capital letters, no exclamation points, no threats of disownment. Addison, we are back in Cincinnati. We need to sit down and talk like adults. No lawyers, just family. We want to apologize. We want to fix this. Please give us a chance to explain before this gets out of hand. Dinner at O'Malley's? Thursday at 6? I stared at the screen. O'Malley's was a mid-range steakhouse in the suburbs. Neutral ground. It was public. It was loud. It was safe. My thumb hovered over the keypad. Part of me, the part that was still the little girl wanting her daddy to be proud of her, wanted to believe him. We want to fix this. Maybe they had realized the gravity of what they had done. Maybe the police report had been the wake-up call they needed to snap out of their narcissistic fugue state. But the other part of me, the part that now owned a blazer and a fraud case number, knew better. This wasn't a peace treaty. It was a negotiation. And I held all the leverage. I forwarded the text to Sienna. They want to meet. Thursday at 6. O'Malley's. I am going. Are you in? Her reply came back in 30 seconds. I am in. I am not letting you face them alone. I texted my father back. I will be there. Sienna is coming with me. Conditions. We meet in the main dining room. If you ask for money, we leave. If you raise your voice, we leave. If you lie, we leave. His reply was instant. Agreed. See you there. Thursday evening arrived with a heavy, humid heat that clung to the skin. I didn't dress for a family dinner. I dressed for a deposition. I wore my navy suit. I wore my hair pulled back tight. I carried a leather portfolio instead of a purse. Inside the portfolio wasn't a napkin or a lipstick. It was a file folder containing the timeline of their theft, the copy of the forged loan documents, and the police report. I met Sienna in the parking lot. She looked different. She was wearing a simple black button-down shirt and jeans. Her uniform for the coffee shop job she had started 2 days ago. She looked tired, but solid. Ready? I asked. No, she said honestly, but let's get it over with. We walked in. The restaurant smelled of grilled onions and stale beer. My parents were already there, seated in a booth near the back, but visible enough. My mother looked diminished. Without the expensive clothes I had unknowingly paid for, without the professional hair and makeup, she looked older. Her face was tight, her lips pursed in a thin line of perpetual victimhood. My father looked nervous. He was drumming his fingers on the table, a habit he only did when he was about to sell a lie. They stood up when we approached. My mother reached out as if to hug me. I took a step back. Sit down, Mom. She froze, her arms empty in the air. A flash of anger crossed her eyes, but she swallowed it and sat back down. We slid into the booth opposite them. The table was wide, but it felt like a canyon. Thank you for coming, my father started. He clasped his hands on the table. We know things have been tense. Tense? I repeated the word. Dad, I have a fraud investigator on speed dial. Tense is when you argue about politics. This is criminal. Let's not use that word, my mother hissed. Glancing around at the other diners, we are a family. Families have misunderstandings. Forging a signature on a $95,000 loan is not a misunderstanding, I said calmly. It is a felony. But you said you wanted to apologize. So, go ahead. I am listening. My father cleared his throat. He looked at me, then at Sienna, then back at me. We are sorry, he said. We really are. We never meant for it to get this far. We got in over our heads. Addie, the house needed work. The bills were piling up. We thought since you were doing so well, since you had that good job. You thought what? I pressed. That my credit score was yours to burn? We thought you would want to help, my mother interrupted, her voice trembling with a practiced fragility. We thought you would be proud to support your family. We raised you to be generous. We didn't think you would begrudge us a little help in our old age. A little help? Sienna spoke up for the first time. Her voice was sharp. Mom, you went to Paris. You bought a tennis bracelet. You booked a facelift. My mother whipped her head towards Sienna. You stay out of this. This is between me and your sister. You don't know the whole story. I know enough, Sienna said. I saw the receipts. I saw the loan papers. You used Addie's name to buy me an apartment I didn't even ask for, just to make yourselves look like big shots. We did it for you! My father slammed his hand on the table, causing the silverware to jump. We wanted you to have a start in life. We wanted you to be happy. At my expense, I said. My voice was ice cold. You were willing to destroy my future to build a stage for her. That is not love. Dad, that is sacrifice. And I was the lamb. Oh, stop being so dramatic, my mother scoffed, rolling her eyes. The mask was slipping. The apology was disintegrating into the familiar pattern of dismissal. You always make everything about you. Addison, my money, my credit, my future. Did you ever stop to think about us? About how hard it is for us? We are drowning. The mortgage is overdue. The car is about to be repossessed. We have nothing. She leaned forward, her eyes pleading. We need you to drop the case. Addie, please, if you proceed with this police report, the bank freezes everything. They will take the house. Where will we go? Do you want your parents on the street? I want the truth, I said. You said you wanted to fix this. Fixing it means taking responsibility. It means admitting you stole from me. We borrowed, my father insisted. We were going to pay it back. When my settlement came in, there is no settlement, I said. I checked that too. That payout ended 5 years ago. He went pale. He hadn't expected me to know that. I opened my portfolio. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was a blank page. I took a pen out of my pocket. I have a question, I said. It is a simple question. If you answer it honestly, right now, I will consider dropping the civil lawsuit. I won't drop the police report. That is out of my hands. But I won't sue you for damages. My parents exchanged a look, a flicker of hope. What is the question? My mother asked. I looked her dead in the eye. Tell me one thing about me, just me, Addison, that makes you proud. Not my job, not my money, not my ability to fix your problems. Tell me one thing about who I am that makes you proud. The table went silent. The hum of the restaurant seemed to fade away. I watched them. I watched their eyes search the ceiling, the floor, the menu. I counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3. My father opened his mouth. Well, you are very organized. That is a skill, I said. That is useful to you. Try again. My mother shifted in her seat. You are responsible. You always pay your bills. That is financial utility, I said. Try again. 4, 5, 6, nothing. They couldn't do it. They literally could not think of a single trait, a single passion, a single aspect of my personality that they valued, unless it served them. I looked at Sienna. She was crying silently. She knew. She knew that if I had asked her that question, the answer would have been, "You are beautiful," or "You are talented," or "You light up a room." That is what I thought, I said softly. I put the pen away. I started to close the portfolio. You ungrateful little, my mother snapped. The fragility was gone. The venom was back. Full force. After all we did, we put a roof over your head. We fed you. And this is how you repay us? By trapping us with trick questions? By humiliating us in a restaurant? I didn't humiliate you, I said. Your silence did. You are just like your Aunt Valerie, my mother spat. Cold, selfish. You think you are better than us because you went to college? Because you have a fancy job? You are nothing. You are a boring, invisible little girl who no one would look at twice if it weren't for us. Mom, Sienna yelled. Stop it. And you, my mother turned on Sienna. You traitor. Standing there with her, do you think she cares about you? She hates you. She has always been jealous of you. She is only using you to get to us. She is not using me, Sienna said, her voice shaking but loud. She is the only one who told me the truth. The truth? My father laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. The truth is that we did what we had to do to survive, and if you two had any loyalty, you would help us instead of judging us. He looked at me, his face red. You need to call the bank, Addison, tomorrow. You need to tell them it was a mistake. You need to tell them you authorized that loan. I can't do that, I said, because I didn't. You have to, he shouted, or we lose the house. Then sell the house, I said calmly. Sell the car, get jobs, live within your means. That is what adults do. My mother leaned across the table. Her eyes were slits. You listen to me, she whispered. If you don't drop this, we will sue you. We will tell everyone that you came to us, that you begged us to open that line of credit because you couldn't qualify on your own. We will say, you are the fraudster. You can't, I said. I have the emails. I have the handwriting analysis proving the signature is forged. I have the timeline. Handwriting analysis? My mother scoffed. Please, you didn't pay for that. I did, I lied. But it doesn't matter. The bank's investigators are already doing their own. They won't find anything, she shrieked. Because I signed it exactly like you do. I practiced for weeks. I have your old journals. I know exactly how you loop your A's. The restaurant went dead silent. Sienna gasped. My father froze, his face draining of all color. He looked at my mother with pure horror. My mother stopped. Her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide. She had just confessed. She had just admitted, in front of witnesses, that she had premeditated the forgery, that she had practiced, that she had used my personal journals, my private thoughts, to learn how to steal my identity. I looked at her. I didn't feel angry anymore. I felt a profound, hollow sadness. I didn't know that, I said quietly. I didn't know you used my journals. I thought you just traced it from a check, my mother stammered. I didn't mean... You did, I said. And thank you, because that was the last piece of the puzzle. I stood up. I picked up my portfolio. Sienna, I said, let's go. Sienna stood up immediately. She didn't look at our parents. She looked straight ahead. Addison, wait. My father scrambled up. She didn't mean it. She is stressed. You can't use that. I don't have to, I said. The police will do their job. Goodbye, Dad. We walked away. We walked past the other diners who were staring at us with open curiosity. We walked out into the humid parking lot as the door closed behind us. Muffling the sounds of the restaurant, I heard my mother start to scream at my father. We walked to my car in silence. When we got there, Sienna leaned against the passenger door and slid down until she was crouching on the pavement. She put her head in her knees. I am sorry, she sobbed. I am so sorry. I looked down at her. Get up, Sienna, I said gently. We have to go. Where? She asked, looking up. I am buying you dinner, I said. Real dinner, and then we are going to celebrate. Celebrate what? She asked, wiping her nose. That our family is dead? No, I said, unlocking the car. We are celebrating the fact that for the first time in 30 years, we are finally orphans, and we are free. The fluorescent lights of David Gentry's conference room were unforgiving. They hummed with a low-frequency buzz that seemed to vibrate against the glass walls. My parents sat on one side of the mahogany table, looking small and gray in the harsh illumination. Sienna sat next to me on the other side. She was wearing her work uniform, a black polo shirt smelling faintly of roasted coffee beans. I was wearing my navy blazer. This was the end of the line. My father was wringing his hands. A nervous tic I used to find endearing, but now found pathetic. My mother was staring at the wall, her jaw set in a line of stubborn refusal. They still thought this was a mediation. They still thought we were here to discuss a payment plan, a way for me to absorb their debt quietly so they could keep their house and their reputation. I reached into my portfolio and pulled out a stack of documents. The paper made a heavy, decisive thud as I placed it in the center of the table. This is not a negotiation, I said. My voice was calm, devoid of the tremor that had plagued me for years. This is a notification. My lawyer, David, sat at the head of the table. He nodded at me to proceed. What is this? My father asked, reaching for the papers. His hand shook. That, I said, pointing to the top document, is the official confirmation from Homeland Financial Services. The dispute has been formally lodged, the fraud investigation is active, and because I have provided them with the police report and the affidavit of forgery, which, by the way, includes the transcript of Mom's admission at the restaurant, they have officially severed my liability. My mother's head snapped around. You recorded us? I remembered, I said, and my memory is excellent. But more importantly, the bank's forensic handwriting analyst didn't need a recording. They confirmed the signature on the loan documents does not match my signature history on file. It matches yours. Mom. I slid the second document across the table. This is from the credit bureaus. My credit report is now frozen. The accounts you opened in my name, the credit cards, the personal loans, are listed as disputed fraudulent. The balances have been removed from my score pending the criminal investigation. My father went pale. Removed? But if they are removed from you, then they revert to the primary originator, I said, or they become a criminal matter for the people who open them. You are sending us to jail, my mother whispered. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation. I am not doing anything, I said. I am simply stepping out of the way of the train you built. You have a choice. The bank has indicated that if you agree to a voluntary liquidation of assets to repay the principal, they might decline to press criminal charges for the wire fraud. They just want their money. Liquidation? My father's voice cracked. You mean the house? I mean the house, I said. I mean the car. I mean the contents of the safe. Everything. We can't sell the house, my mother shrieked, slamming her hand on the table. It is our home. We have lived there for 30 years. Where will we go? You are putting your own parents on the street. I looked at her. I waited for the guilt to hit me. I waited for that familiar, suffocating wave of obligation to wash over me, telling me to fix it, to save them, to take on just a little bit more debt so they wouldn't suffer. It didn't come. Instead, I felt a vibration in my pocket. I pulled out my phone. It was an email notification. From HR, Rivergate Medical Center. Subject, official offer letter. Dear Addison, we are pleased to offer you the position of Senior Revenue Cycle Manager. Starting salary, $92,000 per year. Signing bonus, $5,000. Start date, February 1st, $92,000. I looked up from the phone. I looked at my parents, who were terrified of losing a house they couldn't afford, and then I looked at the offer letter that proved I could build a house of my own. You have options, I said to my mother. You can sell the house. You have equity in it. Despite the second mortgage, you can pay off the bank. You can rent a small apartment. You can live on Dad's pension and your salary from the bakery. You can live within your means. A small apartment? My mother spat the words like poison. Like a pauper? While you go off and live the high life? I am not living the high life, I said. I am living my life. And guess what? I just got a new job. I am making $92,000 a year starting next week. My father's eyes widened. 92,000? Addie, that is wonderful. If you have that kind of money coming in, surely you can help us with the monthly payments, just until we get back on our feet? He didn't even hear himself. He didn't hear the sickness in his own logic. He only heard a number, and that number sounded like a lifeline. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh, bright and incredulous. No, I said. I am not paying a cent. That money is for my future. It is for my education. It is for my retirement. It is for a house that has my name on the deed and my lock on the door. You are heartless, my mother hissed. I don't know who you are anymore. I am the person you made, I said. I am the result of your math. You subtracted everything from me to give to Sienna. Now, the equation is balanced. I am keeping my own sum. My father slumped in his chair. He looked at the papers scattered on the table. He looked at the lawyer, who was watching him with a pitying expression. He started to cry. It was a quiet, defeated sound. We just wanted her to have a chance. You were always so strong. Addie, you didn't need us. You didn't need help. Sienna, she needed help. We thought you could handle the burden. We thought you were tough enough. I am tough enough, I said softly, but that doesn't mean I deserve the weight. We messed up, he whispered. It was the first time I had ever heard him say it without a qualification. We let it go too far. You didn't just let it go too far, Dad, Sienna spoke up. We all turned to look at her. You used me as the bait, she said. Her voice was steady. You gave me things so I would smile. And then you used those smiles to guilt Addie into paying for them. You made me into a parasite. Sienna, baby, no, my mother reached for her hand. Sienna pulled her hand away. I am moving into a studio apartment on Sunday, Sienna said. It is 400 square feet. It smells like old carpet, and I am paying for it with money I earned making lattes. I pawned the bracelet. I sold the designer bags. I am keeping the car only because I need it to get to work. But I am taking over the payments. You can't live like that, my mother cried. You are special. I am normal, Sienna said, and that is all I want to be. I am not your show pony anymore, and I am not your excuse to steal from my sister. Sienna stood up. She walked around the table and stood next to me. We are leaving now, she said. My mother looked between us, her two daughters, the one she had used and the one she had spoiled, both of us standing together, united by the very wedge she had tried to drive between us. If you walk out that door, my mother threatened, her voice rising to a shriek, don't you dare come back when you fail. Don't come crying to us when the world eats you alive. We won't, I said. I turned to David. Complete the filing. If they don't agree to the sale of the house within 30 days, instruct the bank to proceed with the criminal complaint. Understood, David said. I walked to the door. I didn't look back at my parents. I didn't look back at the people who had given me life and then tried to bill me for it. I walked out into the hallway, Sienna right beside me. We walked out of the building and into the crisp, cold air of late winter. The sun was shining. It was weak, watery sunlight, but it was real. "Are you okay?" Sienna asked. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that didn't cost me a dime. "I am better than okay," I said. "I am solvent." 2 weeks later, the restaurant was small, intimate, and noisy. It wasn't O'Malley's. It was a tapas place in the city, the kind of place where the tables are close together and the laughter bounces off the brick walls. "To Addison!" The glass clinked. I looked around the table. To my left was Janelle, grinning over a glass of sangria. She had been the one who told me to hold the line when I was drowning in guilt emails. To my right was Marcus, my study partner from the revenue cycle class. He had passed the exam with flying colors too, and we had spent the last week debating which one of us was going to be the better manager. And across from me was Sienna. She looked tired. Her hands were red from washing dishes and handling hot espresso machines. She was wearing a sweater she had bought at a thrift store, but she was laughing. She was telling Janelle about a rude customer she had handled that morning, and for the first time, she was the hero of her own story, not a character in someone else's. "Happy birthday, finally," Janelle said, sliding a small cake across the table. It had a single candle on it. It was 3 months late. My actual birthday had been the night I sat alone with a grocery store cupcake and a negative bank balance, but this felt like the real birthday. "Make a wish," Sienna said. I looked at the flame. I thought about my parents. I heard through the grapevine, aka Aunt Valerie, that the house was on the market. They were moving into a 1-bedroom rental in a neighboring town. My father was looking for part-time work. They were angry. They were bitter. And they were telling anyone who would listen that their daughters had abandoned them. But they were alive, and I was alive, and for the first time. Our survival was not mutually exclusive. I didn't need to wish for money. I had a career. I didn't need to wish for love. I looked at the faces around the table. This was the family I had chosen, the family that didn't require a subscription fee. I blew out the candle. "What did you wish for?" Marcus asked. "Nothing," I smiled. "I have everything I need." We ate the cake, we drank the wine, we paid the bill, splitting it 4 ways, evenly, fairly, with no hidden agendas. As we walked out of the restaurant, the city lights were twinkling. I checked my phone. I had a notification from my bank. Direct deposit received. Rivergate Medical Center. $3,500. My first paycheck, I stared at the number. It wasn't millions. It wasn't a lottery win. It was wages for work done. It was mine. I looked at Sienna walking ahead of me, shivering slightly in the cold wind. "Hey," I called out. She turned around. "I am getting a lift," I said. "I will drop you off at your studio." "You don't have to," she said automatically. "I can take the bus." "I know I don't have to," I said. "I want to." She smiled. It was a real smile. I got into the car, and as we drove through the city of Cincinnati, watching the skyline pass by, I realized something. When I withdrew that $400 from the joint account, I thought I was declaring war. I thought I was hurting them. I thought I was taking revenge for 30 years of neglect. But as I sat there, listening to my sister laugh about her new life, with money in my pocket and peace in my heart, I knew the truth. It wasn't revenge. Revenge is about the past. Revenge is about making someone pay for what they did. What I had done was about the future. I hadn't drained the account to punish them. I had drained it to save myself. And in saving myself, I had accidentally saved Sienna too. We were broke. We were scarred. We were orphans of living parents. But we were free. And that is the only inheritance worth having. Thank you so much for listening to Addison's story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening while driving to work, cooking dinner, or maybe taking a walk? Let me know in the comments below. I love reading about where our community is from. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the channel Monica Revenge Stories. Hit the like button on this video And smash that like button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. See you in the next story.